This is Kunitsu-Gami. Full screen mode. Actual dialogue this time. I don't think there was any talking in the reveal trailer from 8 months ago. Okay, so I went back and rewatched the reveal trailer last night, and I'm even more convinced that this game is an RTS than I was the first time I saw it. I think it's just because the first time I saw it, I was so expecting Onimusha, my brain was primed to see an action game. But I think it's more of an RTS game with action elements. Hopefully they confirm or deny that a bit better this time. Day and night cycle. We've seen this footage already. An escort type thing. I love purging. My son loves purging defilement. That's his favorite thing. So when I heard they were making a game about that, I had to get it for him. Give them roles. Yeah, see, this is the RTS element. Okay, so knowing that there's a day-night cycle, that actually makes it more like Pikmin than I thought. I just now thought of that. These enemy designs are pretty good. Even to Capcom to be the only thing in the showcase that has good art direction. You can place them? Huh, so being able to freeze the game for a moment to do that is almost like a CRPG. Being able to pause it temporarily. I guess you can still pause the game every now and then in RTS games like Total War, but it's never really intended for you to do that. Whereas CRPGs like Dragon Age, for example, are kind of balanced around you pausing the game when you give commands. That's what I mean. In Total War, it's not really balanced around pausing the game. They're swagging on that guy. That was the house from the opening shot in the original trailer. Sometimes the camera does look closer, though. Ah, still no release date? Like I said, the reveal trailer was 8 months ago. I was surprised to see that it was 8 months ago when I went to check.
The Goddess mixes action and real-time strategy in an exclusive Xbox Wire piece.
Wire piece? I was surprised to see that it was 8 months ago. So when I was reminded of that, it made me think, okay, we have to at least be getting the release date today, right? But I guess not. I was even thinking that there was a chance it was going to shadow drop with it being a Game Pass game. Knowing that some Game Pass games like Hi-Fi Rush have a history of just immediately shadow dropping. Oh, that was the end. They literally saved the one thing I was looking forward to for last. It's almost as if they knew. Okay, so I'm going to rewatch that trailer. At least it means we don't have to sit through a bunch of other stuff before going back to it. Okay, so let's play this sort of frame by frame. The art direction is so good. It really feels like Capcom and I would say Sega as well. Capcom and Sega are the two companies that still go all out with the art and have that special sauce of them just trying things, you know? In fact, speaking of that, if you watched my original reaction to Kunitsu-Gami, you'll know that I was thinking it was going to be Onimusha at first, and I think a lot of other people were thinking it might have been Onimusha as well. And I bet a lot of people were disappointed to see that it wasn't Onimusha, and I think that's why this game doesn't seem to have a lot of hype surrounding it right now, because it might have a similar reaction to its advertising campaign leading up to its release as Exoprimal, because when Exoprimal was revealed, people were thinking new Dino Crisis, right? And then psych, it's not Dino Crisis, it's Exoprimal. So I think a lot of people then just felt confused about the game and they didn't know how to feel about it. And this game, even though I think this game will be better than Exoprimal, I think it's having a similar reception right now, because just like with Exoprimal, everybody thinking it's this one old Capcom IP making a big return, only to find out that it's not. That's the same thing happening here. Everybody thought it was going to be Onimusha, only to find out it's a new IP. But honestly, I think the fact that Capcom is trying new IPs again is great, because before Exoprimal, I'm pretty sure the last time we got a new IP from Capcom was Asura's Wrath in 2011. So it's been over a decade since Capcom actually tried new IPs. And Asura's Wrath bombed so hard, I think it scared Capcom out of doing new IPs for a while, right? So seeing that we're getting Exoprimal and now Kunitsu-Gami, and then after that Pragmata, 3 new IPs pretty much back to back, assuming Pragmata comes out sometime soon after Kunitsu-Gami, within the next year, right? Because Exoprimal was last year, Kunitsu-Gami was this year, and then maybe Pragmata's next year. That means every year for 3 years straight, we could be getting a new IP, which means Capcom finally has the confidence again to make new IPs without being too scared. So I think that's a really good sign, and I think that's more exciting than them just returning to old IPs, even though I do want them to return to old IPs as well. But my point is, them being weird and experimental and making a new IP like this is more reminiscent of 90s and early 2000s Capcom, when they were making new IPs such as Onimusha, right? So even though this isn't Onimusha per se, them making a new IP in a way is more similar to the Capcom that made Onimusha, if that makes sense. Anyways, a lot of things going on screen. I made that observation last time, I think. Playing it frame by frame on a live stream makes it buffer a little bit each time. That's a little annoying. Should probably just find the trailer on the Capcom channel, but I'll do this instead. I'll do slow-mo. Yeah, a lot of things on screen here. But it is an RTS game. And RTS games usually are pretty busy looking. We've seen that type of door already. I really like the use of pitch black in a lot of these areas. I can't think of any other game in recent memory that does that. Outside of maybe some 2D games or 2.5D side-scrollers in which just inaccessible parts of the screen are blacked out, you know, if it's behind a wall or under the ground. But I mean, in terms of a 3D game in which you can move around, having that much pitch black, definitely a bold artistic choice. And it looks as if in some of these clips, the playable character does not have a band of Pikmin with him. So I'm wondering if maybe the gameplay loop is each stage, if it's stage-based, maybe each stage you start out by yourself and you have to progressively build up more and more Pikmin as you go along. So then when you finally fight the boss, you have a band of people that you can use as an RTS unit. Right here, though, I can't tell if this is some kind of set piece or just a specific part of a level, because I only see the boats here and the 2 enemies sticking out of the water. I think another reason why I might be liking the use of pitch black around certain parts of these environments is that it's maybe a little reminiscent of theater, right? Maybe a little Kabuki-esque. which would definitely be thematic. Yeah, so much stuff going on in some of these screenshots. But even though it looks busy, it doesn't look bad just because everything in it looks so good. I would really like to see the HUD for this game, though. I think the HUD would be very telling in terms of how heavy it is on the RTS side versus the action side of things, right? Bubbles. Yeah, it looks as if he already has some of the RTS guys placed, the Pikmin, for lack of a better term. I don't think you have to micromanage them super hard like you do some units in RTS games. I think maybe you place them in strategic locations, and then once you place them, you kind of let them autopilot until you want to manually call them to a different spot, maybe. It's really fun speculating how this game actually plays, considering it's a mix of two genres you don't usually see mixed together. And also considering it's a new IP. And we can't see the HUD. How long is this fade to black? Another Torii Gate. I don't know if that's an enemy or not. Typically, when you make herbivorous-looking animals, they're usually just there. I really like these kaleidoscopic transitions. These were here in the original trailer as well, but I don't remember if I specifically commented on them. But if these kaleidoscopic transitions are somehow incorporated into the game's presentation, I think that would be awesome. Because it could just be a trailer thing, but I would like to believe that it is in the game as well. We've seen this footage already. This is a clip that was in the initial reveal trailer, or at least a clip that was pretty much the same thing. It's kind of a weird pitch, though, because part of the advertising here is guide the maiden along the path. Okay, so escort mission and then purge the defilement. Okay, I'm just going to press a button by a Shinto shrine and it's going to purify itself. Seems as if it's kind of a hard sell. But then again, Resident Evil 4 is an escort mission as well. And Resident Evil 4 is one of the best games ever made, despite it being an escort mission, right? So if it were another company, I would be a bit more skeptical of the whole escort thing. See this? You just walk up and press a button because that's not really a key feature I would advertise. But I think they mean more thematically in terms of the setting. This is what you're doing in general. I don't think they are advertising this as a game mechanic per se. They just happen to be showing the player hit a button on something to go along with it because they thought this was a good microcosm of the whole purging thing. I'm guessing. Yeah, see, showing some of these others. And this is how you get more of those Pikmin people. And I'm pretty sure, and I made this observation in the last trailer, I'm pretty sure that these Pikmin people are color-coded, just like Pikmin. Because in the other trailer, I noticed that all of the ones wearing a certain color were using a certain weapon. And all of the ones wearing a different color were wearing a different, or were using a different certain weapon. But didn't they say something in this trailer about how you can change out their loadouts? But maybe when you do that, it also changes their color. Okay, here's some of the menu. Bro, okay, I'm just going to search it. I don't know why the stream forcibly interrupted that, even though it had already ended. Right around here. Okay, this is finally some insight into the menus. So this is one of the units. I think this is some generic villager, and you are choosing what to level them up into. Almost similar to Fire Emblem, when you are given multiple options on the class. When a unit levels up to a certain amount, they get to improve their class. They get to upgrade their class, and oftentimes they get to choose between one of two classes. And I think this is a similar deal going on. You can see the arrow, you can see the spear, a staff, and this guy over here just looks like some generic villager that could turn into any of these, right? Rescue villagers and give them roles. Yeah, so this must be giving them a role. I'm wondering, though, if you have to level them up to a certain amount or if you can just instantly do this, because the way they word this, rescue them and give them a role, it makes it sound as if you can immediately assign them to a role. So maybe there actually aren't any kind of level up mechanics, which I think is probably kind of likely, considering Capcom doesn't really do RPGs outside of, Breath of Fire and now, more recently, Dragon's Dogma. Oh yeah, see, look, okay. He's able to turn this villager into an archer as soon as he rescues them. And it still looks consistent that each type of villager, each weapon has its own color code. So I think the archers wear blue. So you can tell at a glance what type of unit it is. Wonder what kind of mechanic that was. Unless it was literally just to light the place up. But he literally had one of his units light up the lantern. It looks as if the staff users are yellow. And when I say staff, I don't mean bow staff. I mean, more like a stave. It looks like some kind of cleric unit. Preparations before the sun sets. This seems kind of tower defense-y. I wasn't able to really absorb this when I first saw it because I was making the connection that, oh, it's even more like Pikmin if nighttime is a big deal. But it looks as if they're setting things up as if it's a tower defense game. See? Let me pay attention to the colors again. Yeah, I still think the archer's blue. Looks as if the spear is red. Can't tell what color that one's supposed to be at a glance. The big guy. I think the big guy just doesn't wear any shirt. Maybe that's his identifier. Yeah, and this must be early game because he doesn't have very many units here. He only has 4, plus the Shrine Maiden. I don't know if she's actually a usable unit in combat or not. Dude, English is so weird. Having 2 lowercase t's touching like that, even though it's just combining 2 words together. Nighttime. So a lot of these enemies we saw in the first trailer, but some of these we have not. Like, for example, I don't think we saw this one in the first trailer. Or that one. Yeah, they're giving them their own intro, so these must be debuting here. Yeah, it looks as if it's not only an RTS action game, but also a tower defense game. But maybe they were taking some cues from siege battles in RTS games, such as Total War. Even though the siege battles in Total War are not very fun, but they could be fun. So it's not a bad idea. I think this enemy is new as well, even though we saw other enemies that were pretty similar looking. Yeah, and here, this is where they say you you can freeze the game a little bit, or show that you can freeze the game a little bit. This seems reminiscent of a CRPG such as Dragon Age, like I said. Because even though you can pause the game in RTS games like Total War, like I said earlier, I don't think that the game is balanced around that. I think the game is designed for you to play it in real time at all times. But a game like Dragon Age Origins, for example, was kind of balanced around being able to freeze the combat as you give your party members other commands. Because Dragon Age Origins was an attempt to make CRPGs a little bit more mainstream. So it has elements of CRPGs and also more mainstream console RPGs. And so that's why they wanted it to be real time, but not fully real time if you didn't want to play it real time. They only wanted it to be real time to an extent so it would appeal more to a console market who weren't as comfortable with CRPGs. So that's why I was making that comparison. Okay, these orbs that are dropping, are these pickups? Because if you're able to absorb those orbs, it's going to make me think even more that this was originally an Onimusha game. Also, another thing I wanted to say about people maybe being disappointed about this not being an Onimusha game. I just want to remind people that oftentimes, from a developer standpoint, developers might start making something with the intent of bringing back an old IP. For example, this could have been an Onimusha game at the start. Maybe they greenlit an Onimusha reboot or a new Onimusha game, and they kept on having these crazy creative ideas, and then they thought, what if we added some RTS element? And it eventually deviated so far from the original pitch. It eventually deviated so far from Onimusha that maybe they took a step back and looked at their work and realized, whoa, we can't call this Onimusha anymore, because it probably happened with Exoprimal. I think it's very likely that Exoprimal started out as a Dino Crisis thing, and then they started wanting to add multiplayer elements, and then they kept doubling down on the multiplayer elements until they decided they are just going to focus on multiplayer, and then they decided to call it something else, because once it deviates that much, they probably thought, oh, well, we can't call it Dino Crisis now because it's so different. It did happen with FromSoft with Sekiro, because Sekiro was going to be a Tenchu game. And they were making it to be a new Tenchu game or a reboot of Tenchu. And it eventually became so different that they decided they should call it its own thing, Sekiro, instead of Tenchu, right? So, very possible that happened with Exoprimal. Very possible it happened with this game. Very possible it was Onimusha, and then they just decided to name it something else halfway through. And the reason I say this is because some people might think, oh, Capcom, why does Capcom hate their old IPs? Why does Capcom hate Onimusha, right? I don't think Capcom necessarily hates Onimusha if they are going to make a game this similar looking to it. So I think it's funny that oftentimes the interests of developers are at odds with the interests of fans, or at least what people think they want, right? So I just say all this so that way people will give it a chance, because new IPs always have to fight an uphill battle because they don't launch with a built-in fan base already, right? That's why making a new IP is always risky. And I really do want to let people know that they should give new IPs a chance. Just thinking of Asura's Wrath in 2011, right? That game bombing. But that game kind of bombed for other reasons aside from it being a new IP. But it being a new IP definitely hurt it as well. But I was trying to look at the orbs, because if you can pick up the orbs like the souls from Onimusha, then I'm thinking that might be more evidence that this game did start as an Onimusha game. Yeah, see, look, he did pull them in. He pulled those drops in. They had a really wide pickup radius. See, look at that. That's a really wide pickup radius. I wonder if this AoE bubble is what caused the pickup radius to be that big. But the enemy looked ambiguously on the border of this bubble's range. So maybe or maybe not. But obviously the character isn't having to stop and stand still to suck these things in. Maybe it was like that at one point if this was an Onimusha game, but then maybe once they started adding all of these RTS elements, maybe they realized it wasn't good for the game balance to require the player to stop and stand still with all of these moving parts. It looked like a parry, right? Yeah, it looks like a parry there. Some kind of execution, like a, I don't know if this mechanic trope has a name. I always say glory kills from Doom, but I'm pretty sure Doom didn't really invent that type of mechanic, but I think that's the first time a game gave it a name. So I just say glory kills, and people usually know what I'm talking about. So right here, there are some of those pickups, and it looks as if these are already in the environment before the enemies spawn from the Torii Gate. So I wonder if this is actually kind of an arcadey element. You know how in Devil May Cry 5, for example, there are some health and meter pickups that are already in the map for some of the boss fights. So you can save them for later. You could save them for a specific part in the fight. That might be what's going on here, which would be on brand for Capcom because Capcom does tend to lean towards the arcadey side of things. Okay, this is when they go on the boat. I'm thinking this has to be stage-based. I wonder if there's any incentive to go back through the stage after you've cleansed it. Because right here, it's kind of implying that you do, but it might just be for a cutscene. And I keep on trying to look to see if we see any kind of hub. Because this looks like the type of game that might have a hub for you to manage all of the units that you have recruited. But again, if it's super stage-based, maybe you can't stockpile units in a hub. Maybe you just start each stage with 0, and each stage has a certain amount you can get, right? Because maybe once you cleanse the area, the villagers just go back to living in that area, and they don't go back with you to a hub. Here, though, is interesting, because this looks as if it's a significant boss, but I don't see any of the villager Pikmin people anywhere. Maybe that's some over here. Oh, I guess that's one right there. They're hard to see, but they are here. Maybe it's just a much bigger open area, so you have the villagers more spread out. Plus, with it being dark, maybe you can't see them if they're more than a few feet away from you. Some kind of Iaido attack. I think the animation at the start was just the long startup to balance out the fact that it's probably a strong move. It looks as if it did kind of slow down the game, though. It looked as if it makes slow-mo here. I wonder if you have different options from that stance, or if it's just the attack animation. Because I'm trying to think, why else would it go slow-mo? If it were a regular attack, slow-mo would just be for a visual effect. But you could also make the slow-mo a stance, and then as things are slowing down, you could identify what's going on around you, and then you could decide which move to do from the stance. And that's how they ended it. Still no release date. I still think that's weird, because when they initially showed this game, it looked pretty close to complete. And they also immediately said that it was going to be a Game Pass game. And I think Microsoft doesn't like showing off Game Pass games too early before a release date. Obviously, it doesn't have to be as extreme as Hi-Fi Rush, because Hi-Fi Rush literally shadow dropped and got revealed the day it released. But I thought that it would at least be sooner than 8 months. So I think that's a little crazy. I really was expecting a release date today. But maybe they want it to be significantly after Dragon's Dogma 2. Maybe they are considering this to be a major release from Capcom, even though I think a lot of people, for some reason, aren't thinking of this game as a major release. And maybe it's because they said it was going straight to Game Pass. Maybe when people hear that a game is going straight to Game Pass, they perceive it as less valuable. But Capcom did say that this was being made by the Dev 1 team. So this is a significant team at Capcom working on this. And knowing that it's having this long of an advertising campaign, it's making me think that maybe this is a bigger deal than even I thought. Even though I was super excited for this, even when I saw this the first time. So anyways, thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know in the comments what you think about this game. Let me know if I missed anything or if you observed anything that I didn't notice. And let me know if you have any release date predictions. And with all of that said, I will see you guys later. So bye for now.